The Way Home. This is a completely different kind of Korean movie. Despite its IMDb rating of 7.7, this movie is actually above the rating. In your family, there are surely grandparents. Perhaps they're alive, or perhaps they've passed away. This story will greatly increase your love for them in many ways. And you, yourself might be a grandparent or a great-grandparent one day. So, the story of the movie is very important to you personally. I'm telling you, this story will touch your heart deeply. At the beginning of the movie, we see a mother and her son. This boy's name is Lee. Actually, he was going to his grandmother's house. He grew up in Seoul, the capital city of South Korea, and his grandmother's house was in a very rural area. So, they had to take several buses to get there. Lee had never seen his grandmother before, and this was the first time he was going from the city to the village, which is such a remote village. Lee didn't like the behavior of the rural passengers on the bus at all. He reached the peak of his irritation. Finally, they arrived at that remote village, but after getting off the bus, Lee didn't want to go with his mother anymore. At that point, his mother scolded him a lot, practically forcing him to go to Lee's grandmother's house. But when Lee saw the dilapidated condition of his grandmother's house, tears came to his eyes. Meanwhile, Lee's mother started talking to his grandmother. We then understood that Lee's mother had a business in the city, which had suffered losses, forcing her to look for a job now. Lee's father had left them a long time ago. So, she is planning to leave Lee with his grandmother and return to the city. Lee's mother also apologizes to her mother because she could not inquire about her mother for so many years. Afterwards, Lee's grandmother is introduced. She is a mute woman. While she can hear, she cannot respond to any conversation. Lee's mother wants to introduce Lee to his grandmother, but the rude and spiteful Lee steps back, calling her dirty. Why we call Lee a rude boy will become very clear to you gradually. Lee's mother gives her mother some vitamins. Meanwhile, Lee takes his food out of his bag and sets it aside separately. He makes it clear to his grandmother that this food is exclusively his and he won't share it with anyone. Lee's mother tells his grandmother, "As soon as I find a job, I'll come back to take Lee." With that, she bids farewell and leaves on the next bus heading back to the city. After Lee's mother leaves, his grandmother tries to hold his hand. Lee not only pulls away but also curses at her. This clearly shows how much Lee's morals have deteriorated growing up in the city's environment. This is a familiar picture in our society. It makes us question how much moral education we are actually providing to our children. Do the children of the current generation feel the same way about their grandparents in the village as you do about yours? What are we really teaching these children? Anyway, Lee did everything he could to annoy his grandmother. On the other hand, his grandmother tried her best to take good care of him. She even wanted to give him her own food, but Lee threw it away. Actually, Lee was very arrogant. The following day, a local boy named Kim came to meet Lee. When Kim tried to touch Lee's toys, Lee refused to let him. Lee made it clear that he wasn't willing to share his toys with anyone. Just like children today are addicted to tablets and mobile phones, Lee was addicted to video games. He spent all day playing it. One day, the battery of his gaming device ran out. So, he asked his grandmother for money to buy a new battery. But where would this elderly woman get money from? She showed Lee her empty pockets, indicating that she had no money. But Lee was relentless. He kept pressuring his grandmother for money. However, his grandmother gently pushed his hand away, indicating she had nothing to give. But this didn't stop Lee. Frustrated at not getting any money from his grandmother, Lee stormed off, pushing her aside and left from there. However, his grandmother didn't say anything to him. And that's our grandparents. No matter how much we annoy them, they never say anything. But watching the movie, I felt intense anger towards Lee. He returned home and turned the entire house upside down to find money. But he couldn't find any. Frustrated at not finding any money, Lee angrily broke one of his grandmother's favorite pots. Even this didn't stop him. He then threw his grandmother's only pair of torn shoes into the fire to destroy them completely. But Lee's grandmother went through all that trouble to bring water for Lee from that distant mountain. With empty feet, her feet blistered from the lack of shoes. When she returned home, a game sticker of Lee got stuck to her bloodied foot. Seeing this, Lee scolds at his grandmother. The sticker was so precious to the boy that he didn't even notice his grandmother's bloodied feet. Honestly, during these parts of the movie, tears welled up in my eyes unknowingly. I couldn't bear the pain of the elderly woman. I know you might be feeling angry towards this boy too, but keep your anger in check and watch the entire story. Then, Lee stole the only hairpin of his grandmother to buy a battery for his video game. He took the hairpin with the intention of selling it in the market to get money for his gaming device battery. However, even after a lot of searching, he couldn't find any battery for his gaming device. When he was returning home from the market, he lost his way. At that moment, an elderly man gave Lee a lift on his bicycle and took him back to his village. When Lee was heading back home, he saw his grandmother had come a long way looking for him. Lee then thought, now my grandmother will surely punish me, because I stole her hairpin. But his grandmother didn't say anything to him. Lee then sees how far his grandmother came to search for him, using an old spoon to tie her own hair. He returns home with his grandmother. Since that incident, he gradually tries to embrace himself with the rural environment. When Lee's grandmother asks him through gestures what he wants to eat, Lee says he wants pizza, burgers, and chicken fries. But his grandmother doesn't understand any of it. Then Lee brings out a menu card from his bag to explain to her. His grandmother only understands that he wants to eat chicken. Afterwards, the elderly woman puts in relentless effort and takes the last vegetables from her home to the market. After toiling all day, she sells them in the market to buy chicken for her grandson. When she returns home, she cooks the chicken beautifully for her grandson. After cooking, when she offers the chicken to Lee, he angrily throws away the food, as he wanted to eat pizza and chicken fries. But the boy doesn't realize how much effort his grandmother put into buying that chicken for him and how much love she cooked it with. Lee falls asleep afterwards. However, in the middle of the night, he wakes up and enjoys eating those chickens with great pleasure. From then on, you will see a changed Lee, because his grandmother's love was gradually changing him from within. The following day, his grandmother gets a severe fever. Lee covers her with a blanket. He takes care of her a lot. Then Lee goes for a walk outside the village. Then he sees a cow charging towards the boy named Kim. But Kim somehow saves himself from the cow. And in this excitement, Lee and a girl who was there are very happy. The girl's name was Seo Jun. But after Lee's excitement, he accidentally destroys Jun's toys. But Lee still couldn't fully come out of his ego, so he was too shy to express his grief to Jun. Nowadays, Lee goes to the city every day with his grandmother to sell vegetables. After selling the vegetables, his grandmother treats Lee to his favorite food at a good restaurant. After eating, they both boarded the bus to return to the village. Although Lee has changed somewhat, he still hasn't changed completely. When Lee sees a child on the bus eating chocolate, he insists to his grandmother that he wants to eat that chocolate. Lee's grandmother then takes the packet of chocolate left by that child, and goes to the nearby shop to buy chocolates for her grandson. She buys the chocolate for Lee and brings it to him. Lee takes the chocolates and sits in the back seat of the bus, but his grandmother doesn't get on the bus. That girl named June was also with him, and there was another boy with them. Lee's grandmother hands the bus fare of Lee to the other boy through the window of the bus, and gives her bag to Lee. But Lee refuses to take the bag, because Lee felt a lot of animosity towards that boy from the very beginning, when he saw him with June. Therefore, his mood was very bad. Afterwards, they return to the village by bus. Lee gets off the bus and waits for his grandmother. One bus after another arrives, but still no sign of his grandmother. After a while, he sees his grandmother walking slowly towards the village, because, after buying chocolates for Lee, there was no extra fare for his grandmother to return home by bus. So, the elderly woman sends her grandson by bus, and she herself walks all the way by foot to come back from the city to the village. This movie truly exemplifies the immense sacrifices our grandmothers made to make our childhood so beautiful. Even Lee gradually began to understand the invaluable love of his grandmother. At that moment, he leaves the only chocolate he had in his pocket in his grandmother's bag, and they head back home together. The next day, Lee scares Kim by lying about a bull, and runs away from there. But shortly after, he falls in front of Kim. Still, due to his ego, Lee couldn't apologize to Kim. Like his grandmother, he runs away from there with his hands on his chest. The following day, June comes to Lee's house and invite him to play with her. Lee is very happy to receive June's invitation to play. He is so happy that he can't even sleep properly all night. The next day, he gathers his toys and goes out to play with June. However, he couldn't fix his hairstyle. Then, a funny incident occurs. He asks his grandmother to cut his hair. She does cut his hair indeed, but when he sees his own hair in the mirror, he bursts into uncontrollable laughter, because he found himself looking very funny. And with this kind of hairstyle, he won't be able to go in front of June in any way. The next day, Lee sets off with his toys for June's place. He leaves his video game in his pocket because he doesn't want to show any bad toys to June. On the way, he sees a steep path on the mountain, and thinks that thought he would go down it easily in his toy car. So, he does just that. And, what is supposed to happen is what happened. His hands and feet were cut off by falling down. Then he continues walking along the path. Suddenly, he spots Kim and hears him yelling, "Cow! Cow!" Lee assumes it's a joke, because before, Lee had joked around with Kim just like that. But within moments, his misconception is shattered. A cow is indeed charging towards him from behind. As it approaches, Lee quickly lies down on the ground to protect himself. Kim arrives and uses a stick to divert the cow away from Lee. And this time, Lee truly apologizes to Kim from the bottom of his heart. Then Kim tells him, "You've already apologized to me before, why are you saying it again now?" And just like the first time, Lee can understand that what his grandmother used to convey with a gesture of her hand, it's actually meant apology. Then Lee decides not to go play with June anymore and starts heading home. Suddenly, he remembers his video game device. He takes it out from his pocket to check if it's broken. That's when Lee notices that his grandmother has left some money with the device, so that he can buy batteries for his gaming device. As Lee looks at the money, tears well up in his eyes. He realizes how much his grandmother truly loves him. He acknowledges that he hasn't been treating his grandmother well. Lee continues walking towards home, tears streaming down his face. Along the way, he notices his grandmother has walked a long distance to find him. Seeing his grandmother, Lee's tears intensify. It's as if his tears refuse to stop. His grandmother wipes away his tears with her hands. Then, Lee's grandmother gives him a letter. Essentially, this letter was from his mother. In the letter, his mother informs him that she has found a new job and will be coming to pick him up tomorrow. After returning home, Lee tries hard to teach his grandmother how to write these two simple sentences: "I'm very sick, and I miss you a lot." He tried hard to learn how to express these words, but his grandmother just couldn't do it. And for the first time, Lee calls her Nanny. Then, Lee tells his grandmother, "If you're ever sick, just send me a white paper. That's how I'll know you're unwell. And no matter where I am in the world, I'll come running to you." Lee cries, worrying about what his helpless elderly grandmother will do from tomorrow. How will she go to the city alone to sell vegetables? Seeing Lee's tears, his elderly grandmother also starts crying. Late at night, when Lee's grandmother falls asleep, Lee carefully weaves several threads inside her needle, because it's really difficult for his grandmother to knit the thread between the needles. The next day, it's time for Lee to leave. His mother has come to take him. Lee's grandmother also comes to the bus stand to bid them farewell. They wait for the bus together. Lee's mother asks him if he has anything to say to his grandmother, but Lee doesn't respond. He stands there quietly. After a while, the bus arrives. Lee and his mother board the bus. Just before leaving, Lee hands over some of his favorites game cards to his grandmother. His grandmother knows that these game cards are more precious to Lee than anything else in his life. So, the elderly grandmother taps on the bus window, trying to get Lee's attention, wants to return the game cards to Lee. But Lee doesn't look back at his grandmother even once, because if he does, he won't be able to hold back his tears. The bus starts moving. Lee quickly leaves his seat and walks to the back of the bus, imitating his grandmother's posture, that same gesture of apology. The bus heads towards the city. And the elderly woman, now alone, starts her journey back home. And we don't know what happened next in Lee and his grandmother's life. And through this unfinished story, the movie concludes right here. Elderly people are often profoundly alone. Sometimes, due to our busyness, we fail to realize this. But consider this, 30 or 40 years from now, you too will be going to your grandparents' place. Today, maybe the elderly person in your home is silently sitting in a corner, like a helpless person. Perhaps you're busy with studies, socializing, a job, or business, and you're really busy now. But remember, the elderly person before you was once as young as you are now, and they too were just as busy. But today, they're quite alone. Spend time with your elderly family members, because one day, you will also grow old. The way you treat them today, 40 or 50 years from now, maybe the God will return the same treatment to you. So friends, that's it for today. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. I read each and every comment. And if you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel alongside giving it a like. Stay well, stay healthy. Goodbye for today. Thank you so much.